with her Cricut, and fitness. So Kara, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I am so excited that you're all joining me tonight and joining us with NEXTGen. I hope that I put together a really great workshop for you all about getting organized, staying balanced in life as we know it today. And I want to provide you with some hacks, some organizing hacks that I think are really going to help you get started and get you on the right track to feeling more organized. So a little bit about myself. I have been in business since 2019. What I do is I go into people's homes and I help them declutter and organize their space so they can spend more time enjoying the environment that they're living in. I put together a presentation for you guys, so I'm going to share my screen, and I want you to feel comfortable asking questions throughout. I'm going to provide opportunities where I'm asking questions. I would love it if you participated. Like Marni was saying, please make sure to raise your hand, hit the raise hand button if you have a question to ask, and we'll make sure to answer your question. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my presentation okay? Awesome. All right. So there are some common issues that I hear and see with my clients on a regular basis and their current situations living at home. So what I'm hearing a lot of is that living spaces are becoming cluttered and chaotic. Homes are now serving multiple purposes. So they're workspaces, oftentimes they're homeschooling spaces if you have kids. They're also the place where you work out. And we're trying to figure out how to balance all of those things when it's becoming more and more difficult to get work done. Mess is getting out of control, and the lines between work and life are more blurred than ever. So I want to go over some tips that I have for you. And I'm going to start with the current situation that we're in as it began in March. So this picture I took on March 12th. It was at 7:45 in the morning. I went to Target because someone had told me the night before that it was getting a little bit difficult to find toilet paper and paper towel. And I couldn't have even imagined that this is what I would walk into in Target. It was about that time that it really hit me what was going on. I started out just going there for a trip for one thing and ended up taking my cart around the whole store, buying anything that I could find that I might need for a time period that was going to be longer than I might know. So I had thoughts of how long is what I'm going to get going to be able to sustain me and my family if we can't get more food, followed by how much is this going to cost, where am I going to put it, and how do I make sure that we don't waste any of it. I imagine that many of you had similar situations the first time, if not the first few times that you went to the store at the start of the coronavirus pandemic. The thing is that many people thought that this pandemic would be short-lived and temporary, and we all made do with temporary solutions. We dealt with an influx of food, excess toilet paper and paper towel, set up workstations at our kitchen tables, and we justified the complete disarray that we were living in with it's only temporary. So the problem is it doesn't feel temporary anymore. We've been living with it for about 6 months now. There's no end date to lean on, which it's difficult to deal with, but this is the situation we're living in. So the best thing that we can do for ourselves is get informed and figure out how we can move forward and make the best of the situation. So we're starting to realize that we're no longer comfortable living in chaos because it doesn't work for us. We're using our homes for multiple purposes, like I said, and it's becoming so frustrating that we need to take action on it. A big part of that is getting organized and going through our stuff and decluttering and trying to make ourselves feel more comfortable in the spaces that we're living in. A big reason for this is because clutter can increase feelings of stress, anxiety, depression, affect our energy levels, and cause us to avoid certain tasks, like doing something about it. So why can't we do something about it? It feels so important, yet maybe you feel frozen by it. It's hard to know where to start and what to do first. So the disorder at home can feel overwhelming and we don't know what to do to fix it. So it's natural to want to feel comfortable, to feel balance at home, but with everything having to change so quickly, we didn't have adequate time to make the changes that we needed. And in fact, if you're living with other people, maybe you notice that they're all handling it differently than you. And some people maybe in your household are a little bit more messy than you are, and it's starting to bother you because you're spending time with them in the house more than usual, and you don't know how to handle that. So the balance of relationships might be off too. So I want to cover up on a little bit of that as well. The reason it's so important to take action is because it's good for our mental health. It's undeniable that being organized feels good. Order and organization undeniably make completing tasks easier. And overall, having an organized space is good for your mental health. Dealing with clutter is exhausting. It's mental, emotional, a lot of decision making is involved, and your brain is overstimulated. So decluttering actually reduces stress, and getting organized can help improve our focus, productivity, and levels of happiness. As you might notice, it's really difficult to focus on the task that you're trying to complete. Like if you're doing something for work, it's really hard to focus when you have a cluttered space around you. And there is a physiological reason for that. And you might find that sometimes the time that you really start cleaning up after yourself is when maybe someone's coming over and there's something, for the last minute. And oftentimes it's a technique to deal with procrastination, is cleaning up clutter, but otherwise it goes undealt with. All right, so I'm going to take you through some solutions that you can implement immediately to improve your current organization at home. The main areas I'm going to focus on tonight are how to organize your work from home, homeschooling if you have kids, and exercise spaces. I'm also going to go over some easy home organization hacks and some ways to stay balanced in our new normal. All right, so work-life balance is something that a lot of us have all strived for at one time or another in our lives. However, now that we're working from home, or a lot of people are working from home, those work-life balance lines are being blurred more than ever because there's no definite start or end date to your workday a lot of times. So we find ourselves working until 9 at night. Someone sends you a text message saying, hey, can you complete this really quickly and send it over to me? Because they haven't left work, they're working at home. So this is a big issue for a lot of people. That's why it's so important to establish a routine first and foremost. Create a schedule for yourself, get your surroundings organized, and set up a space for yourself and your kids to work so you have an environment that you and possibly your kids too can focus in. All right, so here are a few things that I recommend doing for yourself and for your kids. First, number one, I recommend setting a start time for your day, whether that be starting a morning routine where you get up at the same time every single day. I really, as an early bird, I like to make sure I'm starting my day early because it gives me a little bit of personal time in the morning. Sometimes people like to sleep in a little bit. Whatever that might feel like for you, I recommend setting a time every single day so you can get into a consistent routine. I also recommend planning regular breaks throughout the day to get up, get your blood flow going, eat snacks. It really helps you to stay on task. So if you're a phone app person like I am, I highly recommend downloading an app. If you have paper nearby, feel free to take some notes throughout this. It's called Focus Keeper. And what it is it's the concept of Pomodoro where you're working and focused for a specific amount of time. And then it sets a limited break in your schedule where, it's like 25 minutes working, 5 minutes of taking a break, and then it starts over. So what that does is it prevents you from getting burnt out. Another thing is finding a time of day that works best for you to exercise or move so you can get your blood flowing, keep your mind moving. And also, if you don't already plan your meals out, I highly recommend thinking about at the beginning of the week what you're going to be needing for food for the remainder of the week so you can get it on a grocery shopping trip and you're not scrambling at the last minute trying to figure out what to eat. Many people like doing this on Sunday because it feels like the end of a week and the start of a new week. So I highly recommend starting to plan your meals out in advance. For your kids, I recommend setting a start time, planning for breaks throughout the day, depending on their age, recess, and playtime, and also printing their worksheets in advance, either the night before if you can, or at the beginning of the week if you have access to it, because what that's going to do is it's going to set you up for success so you're not scrambling at the last minute, and neither are they. If you're struggling to manage your time and prioritize, some ideas that I have for you are to get a paper planner if you don't already use one. There's a really great website called Trello. That's what I use to manage everything going on in my life. I would be lost without it. If you go to my website later, I have a link to how I use Trello. And I've found it to be the absolute best time management tool that I've found so far. And I also recommend taking 15 minutes at the end of every single day to plan out your next day so you can set your morning up successfully. So your kids know an agenda every day. I also have a few recommendations for things that you could do to make sure that they know what's coming up. So you could get them a whiteboard and post it over or near the area that they're going to be doing schoolwork. Print schedules sent from the teacher. Use paper cover. You can use paper covers to pin them up on the wall so they stay in good shape. And then also help your kids stay on task. It'll help your kids stay on task so they know what to expect moving forward into the day. So some ideas to get your space organized to improve the flow of the day. Some of my favorite things to use are magazine holders to stack books upright and papers upright. So what this does is it prevents you from having to shuffle everything around and create a mess. When things are stacked vertically, this goes for most things in your house. If it's stacked vertically, it's going to be easier to get to and easier to see. This is a side note, but no one ever thinks of doing this, but one of the things that if you stack vertically, it's going to totally maximize your space is board games. If you have kids on here or you just like board games yourself, we are used to stacking things horizontally. We do this with a lot of things, including paper. It's really hard to get to things. If you're stacking things vertically, it's a lot easier to get to them and then a whole pile doesn't topple on you. So think about it in that respect. Vertical helps a ton. I also really recommend using paper trays, magazine holders, or file bins to organize important papers that you need to keep track of. Pegboards, as you can see in this picture, those are also a really great solution to utilize wall space. It gives you everything that you need in arm's length and it saves your counter space. So a lot of times we're dealing with situations where we don't have desks. So we're working at a kitchen table or we're working at really anywhere we can find in the house to be alone and working quietly. Our counter space is obviously limited, especially if maybe you and another person are now working from home. So utilizing your wall space is often something that people don't even think about, but it's a great tool because it's something that isn't normally already cluttered. Every afternoon and evening, I also highly recommend tidying up the space around you, just tidying up the papers, throwing out your trash, putting it away so the beginning of your next day feels like a fresh start, kind of like making your bed. All right, so some ideas that are specific to homeschooling. Kids need a quiet place to focus. So whether that's at the kitchen table, in their bedroom, at a desk, at a table in the basement, in an office, anywhere that you're using for them to be doing their work, it should be quiet. So, set kids up with their laptops, their tablets, chargers, printer, headphones, anything that they need in advance so they have everything ready to go. I would recommend something like a shower caddy. They sell them in the dollar section at Target. You can get a little shower caddy, put pencils, colored pencils, crayons. You can use that type of thing to organize your school supplies so you can then just grab it, pick it up, and put it away when you no longer need it for the day. So it's an easy solution to keep everything together, but also hide it when you need to. And I also recommend saving time in the future by having login information. As a lot of you know, trying to search for all the login passwords and things while you're trying to switch from subject to subject, it can be stressful when you're trying to balance working at the same time. So make a list of all of those login usernames and passwords so you have it handy for you. Some ideas for home gym. I don't know if you guys can see a yes or no button on your chat box, but I'd like you to answer yes or no if you have been struggling with finding a way to work out at home because you don't have the right space for it.
If you're struggling to find the yes or no buttons, click participants. It'll pop up at the bottom of the screen that pops up, and then you can click your answer.
And so since I have my screen up, I can't see what everyone's answers are. So if
You have 11 yeses and 8 nos right now.
Okay. Okay, so if any of you who are saying that you are having trouble, finding space, if you wanted to ask or tell me what you're struggling with, I would love to try to give you a quick answer of some ideas that I have for you. If not, what I would say is designate a space to keep your equipment all in one spot. It's going to make your life easier if you commit if you have a place designated to work out. And if you need a quick storage solution for smaller equipment, I recommend finding a bin that's laying around your house or going out and purchasing something that's large enough to hold a few sets of weights, maybe a rolled up mat, resistance bands, cleaning wipes, and any other small equipment that you use on a regular basis. The reason being is because then you have it all together. And rather than feeling like your living room is consistently a gym, you can also just take that bin and put it away when you're done using it, so you feel like it's tidied up at the end of your workout routine. This is especially helpful if you're living with other people and your community living space is turning into a makeshift gym. Are there any questions that were in the chat box at all?
Not seeing any.
Well, I'm going to move on. All right, so some easy at-home hacks that I have for you guys to maximize space. These are some practical ways that you can use things around your house to get organized. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in the next few slides about these, but I'm going to talk about vertical space solutions, paper clutter solutions, and electronics and cord solutions. So those are some common things that I see people generally have a lot of, paper clutter and cords everywhere throughout the house. Give me a thumbs up if you feel like you have cords all over your house and you never find what you're looking for when you're looking for it. Okay. Me too, sometimes, but I have a home base for them and I'm going to explain that in a second. Okay. So, using vertical space or wall space, here are a few different examples that I have of things that seem to work really well. Especially if you are a visual person. So when I say visual, you like to have stuff visible to you, because if you feel like you can't see it, it's out of sight, out of mind, and you forget about it. So maybe you keep mail on the counter because you feel like if you put it away, you're going to totally forget about it. Or something that you have important coming up, you print it out and you keep it on your desk, because if you put it somewhere, it's as good as gone. So one solution is pegboards, as I talked about before. So pegboards and bulletin boards are great, easy, and affordable ways to clear up counter space and take advantage of the empty wall space. So all you need is a pegboard and a set of pegboard hooks, and you have a highly visual and accessible way to organize a lot of your supplies. Another way would be a command center. Generally, people like to have these in mudrooms, back hallways, or in their kitchen. They are a great way to showcase your family calendar so everyone can be on the same page. They are great for storing mail and important papers and important information that you don't want to forget, maybe some homework that your kids need to turn in. You can make a space for that as well. And command hooks and mop and broom hooks, as you can see in the third picture on the right. It's a really great way to organize closets that have doors. Or inside the walls of closets. Getting things off the floor sometimes can really help, so you can free up floor space, so you can store other things like shoes. So those are some vertical space hacks. Now I'm going to move into paper solutions. So some of the most effective solutions that I've seen for managing paper are by using paper trays, magazine holders, and filing systems. So paper trays and wall organizers are perfect for storing papers that are already completed and need to be put away, or things that need action. So I recommend this to everyone to have some sort of system in your house where you can separate papers that you've already dealt with from the ones that you have to take care of still. So if you can see on the far left picture, you can see there's one that's take action, and the bottom one it doesn't say completed, but that's what I would recommend doing, because then you know that if there's something in that take action pile that you have work to be done. magazine holders are great for holding workbooks, papers, and you can even use file folders inside them to organize things even more specifically. And then also everyone should create a simple filing system inside their home for long-term paper storage. So, you know, it might take a little bit of time to set up, but it saves time in the long run when you're looking for vital papers or anything important that you might need. All right, so electronics and cords. Some ways to store those pesky electronics and stray cords so you can find them when you need them is to, and I recommend this for everything, any category in your home, create a designated home for it. So using those yes and no buttons, tell me yes or no, do you have an area or a home for stray cords in your house? What are we looking like?
So far, you have 6 yeses and 9 nos.
Okay. So you have one, great, because it makes it so much easier to put cords away. If you don't have one, I highly recommend making one. All you need is a shoebox, if you have one laying around your house, or a small bin, and label it cords. You can write on it with a permanent marker. If you have a label maker, make a label that says cords. Create a designated home for it. Junk drawers around your house might collect them, but it's always when you're looking for those headphones that you can't find them. You know, it's really simple to create and set up. Take that box, do a round around your house, pick up all the cords that you can see, throw them in there, and be done with it. And now you have a system in place. If you adapt this over time, you know, you can also use a piece of tape or get a more permanent solution, and you can actually label those cords with what they are, because something that I hear pretty frequently is that you have all these cords, but you have no idea what they belong to. So as you acquire new electronics, you know, take a piece of Scotch tape, wrap it around the cord, and write with a marker on it what it's for. And that's a simple way to just keep up and maintain that solution. For electronics that you use, I also recommend having a bin, if not just the same one but bigger, for electronics that you use. So maybe that's a tablet, an external hard drive, USB drive, cords. All of that stuff can go in a bin, and that way, you know, when they're laying around the house, it's a quick cleanup. Now, by using those yes and no buttons, how many of you have old electronics laying around your house that you're not quite sure what to do with? You know, maybe it's an old iPhone 3.
You have 12 yeses and 1 no.
Okay, so there is a really great resource that I found online. I put it in the notes on the slide. It's search.earth911.com. What you can do is you can type in the type of electronic that you have and your zip code, and it will tell you all of the locations in your area that accept those as a recyclable item. So with any electronics that have personal information, I always recommend clearing them off first. Any personal information, clearing it off so you can safeguard yourself. But that's a safe way to get rid of those types of items if you're really unsure with what to do with it.
Hey, Kara, I actually got a question, or actually a comment on that.
Okay.
So for destroying old electronics, and I had a situation where, like, I had all these old towers, and, you know, we're talking about Windows 95, like all this old stuff. So I called like basically an urban e-recycler company that handles data destruction, because I was concerned with like all of this, you know, property or whatever confidential stuff. And actually, this was a free service that this one company did. I'm sure there's like tons everywhere. They sent a video of the company actually destroying the hard drives that had any information that I, you know, thought was at risk. So I think it's important, if you're, you know, looking at that. I mean, I see on the comment box, JVS is a great resource. They have a hard drive grinder. That's exactly what I'm talking about. This company took a video of my hard drives all being grinded down, and certification of destruction. Because, you know, you got stuff on there that you probably don't even know. Like, if you throw it in your recycling bin, it's still on your computer. Anybody could just come and hack it and take it. So just be careful about your data and where it's going if you have old electronics. And JVS is a great resource, and I'm sure there's others that will take all your stuff for free. They come to your house. Yeah, I think that's important.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, it is. And you said JVS or JBS?
JVS.
Okay.
JVS Human Services. Yep.
Great.
We also had 2 hands up previously, and I haven't gotten to them yet in the chat, but if you have a question, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and we will pause, unmute you, and let you ask Carol your questions.
Yeah, so what other challenges with your space do you guys have that make it really hard to get organized? If I'd love to open up a little bit of conversation right now at this point and see what types of challenges you're all facing right now.
Toys.
Toys, okay. Toys are a big one, but I want to see if there's some trends in what people are saying.
Kitchen cabinets.
Okay.
Counter space.
All right, any others?
Multi-use spaces was said in the chat, like dining room table.
Mm-hmm.
Closets was also mentioned. Cords when they are actually being used. Email management. And that's all I have right now. Oh, sorry, the kitchen just popped in.
Okay.
Tupperware. Ooh, that was a big one.
Okay. Wow. Great ones, you guys. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to give a very short synopsis of each one of these in spirit of time. But as far as I'm going to do an overarching synopsis of all of these spaces, and then I'm going to get into a little bit more detail. So when it comes to any space in your house, the most important thing that you need to remember is if there's not a permanent home for it, it's going to be really hard to maintain a permanent organized solution in the long run. So things need categories. And when you're thinking about going about doing it, I know that sounds extremely overwhelming, but all you need to do is take 15 minutes and get started. But you have to plan in advance, and this is not something to do on a whim. So if you do want to tackle a playroom or a kitchen cabinets, your kitchen cabinets, any of these things, you need to set aside a block of time in your calendar to hold yourself accountable to doing it. Because if you set aside that time and commit to yourself that you're going to do it, you're going to feel so much better in the long run. But I know that sometimes that feels extremely overwhelming because you don't know how long it's going to take, and everyone's situation is different. If you have kids, your time is split, so it's not that simple all the time. But what I really recommend doing is setting up homes, and that doesn't necessarily need to cost a lot of money. A lot of times there's this connotation that organizing is going to cost a ton of money because you need to get bins, but you can use things that you have laying around your house to organize and categorize, even if it's just a temporary solution. If you look around and see boxes, shoe boxes, any bins, even Amazon boxes, you can cut them down to size and try to make them work for the space that you have. It's important to label things. So, I guess I'll get into a little bit more detail. Toys was the first one that got brought up. There are a lot of different categories of toys, but if you segment them by things that, categories, say dolls in one bin and action figures in another bin, Legos in another bin. If you start categorizing and, you can cut out a picture from one of the boxes and put it on the front of whatever you're categorizing it in. So, little ones who can't read can recognize what's supposed to go inside. That's going to help not only them access and retrieve their toys, but it's going to help you clean up at the end when you're trying to do a quick cleanup. It just takes some time to sit down and start sorting. As a professional organizer, that's what I help people do, is I work with them to try to get these spaces under control. As far as multi-use spaces, which I'm sure goes in conjunction right now with a lot of these categories, you know, as I was saying earlier, making sure you have anything that you need on a regular basis, transportable, and a place to put it away. So, you know, maybe your printer is on your kitchen table, and that's not ideal, because how do you separate your work life from your personal life when your office is in your kitchen, in your main living space? So if you can even designate one half of your table to be the permanent workspace, and the other area, make it feel homey. Add a bouquet of flowers in the middle of the table and set up placemats around it so it feels like there's a separation. Or if you have an area where you can hide your printer at the end of the day so it's not always in your face, and you know, have your papers contained in something so you can put them away or hide them at least so it doesn't look like visual clutter. That goes a long way with being able to mentally separate those types of things. I have the rest of these written down and I can answer more questions at the end of the presentation, but I'm going to move on for the sake of time. I'm so sorry if I didn't get to yours yet, but I promise that we can talk after too if I didn't answer your question. So I want to shift gears and talk about some ways to stay balanced, because it's so important to create consistency with a schedule, as I was saying before. So setting specific days to get certain tasks done rather than leaving them until the last minute. You know, add these as recurring events in either your calendar or your planner or whatever you use to create your schedule. Make sure that you're sticking to it. If you hear the phrase, fail to plan, plan to fail. If you don't know what you need to do, it's really hard to make sure you're getting it all done without running around aimlessly, just trying to get it all done. If you write it down, you know what you're accountable for. And it's also really important to prioritize those things in terms of importance. Not everything needs to get done all the time. Another piece of advice is to separate your work and personal spaces. I was just saying, again, to reiterate the fact that you need separate spaces, it helps create work-life balance. And it's really hard to relax when your work is staring at you in the face all day long. Another is to declutter. I regularly recommend cleaning out your fridge and pantry, especially right now when maybe you're buying more than normal, buying different things than normal, and you're stocked up, maybe doing Costco runs, and you have things in bulk and you don't know what to do with all that extra stuff. It helps to regularly clean out those spaces that you use on a regular basis, so you know what you have and you know what you need to shop for, and you don't have things that are maybe expired sitting in the back of your pantry taking up unnecessary space. And if you're living with others, I want to talk about how to have hard conversations about home responsibilities, chores, moving and getting rid of clutter. And I'm curious, and I know that this feels like a very personal topic, but if anyone is willing to share an experience that maybe they're going through at home, or you know, with a roommate, with a spouse, where maybe you feel like your space is being, you know, either you feel like you have more stuff than your spouse and it's, you know, it's hard for them, or, you know, maybe your spouse or your roommate has more stuff than you and you feel like it's getting in the way of you feeling comfortable at home. I would love to hear about it. If you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's totally understandable and fine, but I'd love to hear the types of issues that people are going through so we can talk about them, because I do have some advice for how to handle those situations.
Reminder, you can raise your hand in the chat or you can type it in the chat, however you're comfortable.
Hey, Kara, I can say a personal story. Well, it's probably pretty common. So it's not really a roommate situation, but being that I met my in-laws, you know, I got all this stuff that's accumulated over many years that I'm trying to, you know, work around because I'm working remotely and trying not to, you know, overstep and, you know, helping them move stuff around and clean stuff up. But, you know, they appreciate my help. So I guess, how do you work with situations where, let's say you have a spouse or, you know, your kids or parents or in-laws or roommate, where let's say you're more apt to do decluttering and organizing and like tidying things up, but, you know, the other person kind of has always been living a certain way, and you don't want to interfere with their lifestyle, but you want to at least make it more livable for you. So how do you work around that interaction?
Yeah, so especially when you're living in someone else's space, it's so important to be respectful. With anything, you appreciate that you're there, but you want to make sure that that everyone feels comfortable in the space that they're in. So it's really important to stray away from any sort of passive aggressiveness, moving, like hiding things or trying to hold it over their head that things are in the way of your stuff. And it's really all about how you address the issue. So say there's something that you notice is always getting put in the way in your living room, and it starts to bother you. So I recommend approaching this situation, having a conversation with them privately and saying something like, hey, when you put your bag on the floor in the living room, this is how it really affects me. And try to not be on the defense about it or be rude, but just understand that, hey, I know that I'm coming into your home. I so appreciate it. I have a really hard time working, in a distracted environment or a cluttered environment. Don't say it like that. Don't say like a cluttered environment, but say I notice that you do this. When this happens, this is how I feel. So use I statements more than you statements. So, it is affecting you. So don't place blame on the person, but make sure that they feel like they can understand where you're coming from as well and why it's affecting you. It also helps to then say like, hey, if there's a way that I can help out around the house, let me know. I'd love to help. Sometimes talking about who's responsible for different tasks can help take weight or take a load off of other people. A lot of times people don't want to be messy, but they just are so busy with their own life that they don't have time to always pick up after themselves. So maybe sometimes it's seeing what you can do to help them out so they feel like they have more time as well.
Sarah, you had a couple questions in the chat also.
Okay.
One was organizing the garage, the attic, and the basement, and someone else said putting away clean laundry or delaying to put it away.
Okay, I want to touch on the laundry really quickly because what I've found a big pattern with this, and this is not overarching, but a big pattern is people feeling like once they commit to putting things away, it needs to be put away perfectly or a certain way. So that means, hey, I have to fold all of this stuff and I don't know how long that's going to take me and I don't have time. Guess what? It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be put away. Because if you're not putting it away, what happens is it piles up, and that's the opposite of what you're trying to achieve by doing the laundry anyways, right? You're doing the laundry to get clean clothes so you can wear them and repeat. But it's so important to remember that things don't all need to be done perfectly. They just need to be done. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get that stuff done. So really try to set aside a few minutes to just get started. If it helps to, sit down on the couch with it so you can fold or roll or get it all together while you're watching a show, doing something that you enjoy might make it a little bit more of an enjoyable process. Or if you have kids and you feel like you're super busy, if they're old enough to get them involved in the folding process, that might help too and make it a fun activity that you guys can do together. And it also teaches them how to fold. All right.
Kara, I'm so sorry. This has come up twice now, and I apologize for missing it the first time, Fran. But the question is bathrooms, and there's ways to organize kitchens, so cooking is an easier process. But how about bathroom cupboards or bathroom counters, either your own or when you're sharing with someone, and your bathroom stuff is kind of more private?
It's more what? I'm sorry. What was
private.
that? Private. Okay. So there are a few different things that I'd recommend. So I'm gonna talk about the privacy one first. So if everyone's counter space is different. So some people have really limited counter space and also really limited cabinet space. So if you have counter space or cabinet space to spare, I recommend getting maybe a bin that is a solid color. So you can put anything that's private, like prescription medications, personal hygiene products, anything that you want to keep private, you'd put it in a bin with your name on it so it can be tucked away and you know what's in there. But, you know, the whole world that's, you know, especially if you're living in an apartment with someone else and it's also the bathroom that everyone uses when they come over and you know, to your apartment, you want to make sure that that's put away somewhere. So even if you have to keep it in your bedroom, I recommend putting it in a bin and keeping it there for safekeeping. If you are sharing, you know, with another person and you have items all over the counter, I recommend either getting a tray that you can put on your countertop so you can collect all. There's something about a tray that makes it feel like when everything is collected in one place, that is an actual place and a home for it. So it just visually feels a whole lot less cluttered. You know, honestly, if you have a glass plate in your bathroom that you're not using, you can use that as a tray. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It just needs to be a home. If you're limited on counter space, I recommend getting some shelving, some small shelves that you can maybe hang and make use of the vertical space on your wall. What that does is it gets all the clutter off the countertops and it puts it again in a home. But that's a really good solution if you have limited cabinet space. Again, if you have cabinet space to spare, if you have a little closet in your bathroom, even better. You know, I recommend getting some bins and segmenting different categories, especially if you're sharing with someone else. Have, you know, if you're living with a roommate, have a bin for you and a bin for your roommate, or, you know, just make your own and then your roommate can do whatever they want to do with their stuff. And if you're living in your, you know, your home, you can have bins for medicine and first aid and, you know, your nail products and shower stuff. You know, you can have different types of bins for different purposes. And what that does is it makes it a whole lot easier for you to find what you're looking for when you need it. If you don't want to do bins, you know, bags work great too. Plastic bags, reusable bags, whatever you want to use. Are there any others that seem to come up a lot?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Yep. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. So now that you have you have a little bit more in your tool belt to know what you need to do to get organized, I want to make sure you know what to do with some of those unwanted items that you've now decluttered and gotten rid of. So this step causes a lot of stress oftentimes with people because they don't know what to do with their stuff. So they are apprehensive to get started because they know once they get started and get all this stuff, they don't know what to do with it. So here is a list that I put together of what you can do with some of these items. Feel free to get your camera phone out and take a picture of this next slide so you can reference it later. Okay, so if you're looking to sell some items, some great resources are Facebook Marketplace, local resale and consignment shops. If you've heard of Poshmark, Mercari, and eBay, those are all apps where you can sell things online so you can reach a much broader audience. And if you're looking to donate, a lot of organizations are now accepting donations again, but they are so overloaded with donations from everyone getting rid of their stuff over the last few months that it is really important to call them in advance and see what types of donations they're currently accepting and if they're even accepting donations right now. Some have specific days that they will accept donations. So, you know, before wasting your time and driving around to these different places, call them first. It'll save you time and a headache. There are also organizations that will pick up from your home directly. One that I know of in the area is Vietnam Veterans of America. They will actually come directly to your house and pick up donations for you. You just set it up online. And then lastly, as I was talking about before, earth911.com is a great resource if you're looking for recycling different items. Something I see in a lot of people's houses are old paint cans. And they just exist there for the rest of your time living in this house because people just don't know what to do with them, even if they're not using that paint anymore. So it even gives you resources on how to recycle old paint cans so you can get them out of your basement. All right, so you know, we talked about organizing work, school, and exercise spaces, some easy home hacks and ways to stay balanced. I know that a lot of times people wonder what, you know, they know they need things, but they don't know what to buy. I did put together a list on my website. So if you wanted to check that out, that's where I have them listed. It's, there are products that I found that I like that I think would be useful based on what I talked about today. if you go to my website and follow the link to shop our favorite products, they'll be featured under the work from home and homeschool section. So you can check that out later. And if you want to get in touch with me, if you feel like you need help, or even if you have questions about today's presentation and you wanted to dig a little deeper, feel free to reach out to me. This is my contact information. I'd love to hear from you. I know that I'm going to open up questions in just a minute here. So, if I didn't answer something that you wanted to talk about before, please feel free to raise your hand and I'd love to answer it for you. Obviously, with limited time, I might not be able to get to everything, so please reach out to me if you need to. So I'd like to open it up to questions or comments, anything. I'd love to open up the floor to discussion right now, because I know that this is a hot topic for a lot of people.
I know one thing on the chat that personally I struggle with is storing Tupperware and, losing all the different tops to bottoms and where to sort them so they're not all cluttered in a drawer.
Okay, so I really recommend, first of all, organizing them in a drawer is a great solution because it's low enough down where you can see everything from a top-down view. When you are going about organizing Tupperware, the first thing I recommend doing is taking it all out so you can sort through and see what even has a match. So we tend to keep Tupperware from people that have come over and left leftovers, or we bring things home from other people's houses. And we just collect an assortment of Tupperware over the course of our lives, and some have broken lids, or they don't have lids, they're cracked, mismatched. Go through, separate all of your bottom containers to the tops, make sure everything has a match. Everything that doesn't have a match, or it's broken, worn out, gross, whatever, toss that stuff so you can see what you're actually left with, which is probably a fraction of what you started with. With anything organizing, the first step is decluttering and getting rid of things that
Sorry, I took off your
I couldn't figure out how to do it, so thank you. So just making sure that you're decluttering first, because you don't want to be organizing things that you don't need anymore. It just takes up unnecessary space. So then once you do that, you can do the lids one of two ways. If it's easy to stack them with the same size container because you have the space, that's great. I personally like finding an area of a drawer or the cabinet that you can separate off the lids and keep them stacked together and separate from the containers. So you stack like size containers, and then inside those you can stack the same shape. So if you have some large square containers, stack the smaller square ones inside as high as it'll go before toppling over or being too high for the drawer. And try to keep that consistent throughout the drawer so it's easy for you to get to what you need. If you have a large drawer, you can get an expandable drawer divider and section off one piece of the drawer, or you can find a bin that you can put all of the lids in. The whole purpose is just to contain them and keep them separate from toppling all over your drawer and becoming a mess. Does that answer your question?
That was great. Yeah, thank you.
Good. What else do we have on here? Let me see.
There's something in the chat. Where are some of your favorite places to purchase these organization products?
I have a few favorites. The Container Store is my favorite because they have so many different options, and it's almost as if any size container that you need, they have there. They have so much variety. But I also find a lot on Amazon, a lot at Target, and the Dollar Tree has great solutions as well. So for all ranges of budgets, there are so many great solutions. Sometimes it comes down to being a little bit creative and not using things maybe for their intended purpose, but just based on what shape they are and what they can hold.
I have a question. The other thing that always bothers me in my own kitchen is like the lids of pots and pans. Like I feel like they're always scattered and get shoved to the back. Do you have any advice on organizing those?
So yeah, there's a few different things you can do. Some pots and pans are actually made in a way where you can turn the corresponding lid upside down and stack other pots and pans directly on top. And it's something that maybe people just don't even think of, but that sometimes works. Sometimes it doesn't. In the event that it doesn't, you can, there are a few different things. So what I've done before is I've used command hooks and I've put them on cabinet doors, and I've used 3 for a lid. And I will actually like use it as almost a pocket to store the lid in on a door, and that works if you have a cabinet door. If you're doing that, make sure that you're following the instructions exactly as it says on the purchase, or on the package, so they don't fall, so the command hooks don't take on too much weight and fall off. But another option is to get a lid organizer, which you can get, you can find it on Google, Google it and find a lid organizer. And there are so many different options, and it just really generally comes down to what space you have. So, finding a place where you can put these things that's an appropriate location in the kitchen where it's not too far away from the oven, but also make sure that you're giving it enough space. Organize your stuff for the space that you have. And things that you don't use all that often really shouldn't be in the prime real estate of your kitchen. So if you're not using, your juicer regularly, it shouldn't be in the bottom cabinet where it's easy to access. It should either be stored in the basement, given to someone else, or put up high where you don't need to get to it on a regular basis.
Kara, there was another question. How did you get inspired to start organizing, and who are 3 people, if you have 3 people, that you have followed in the field?
Okay, so I've always been an organized person. I would say it got taken to the next level once I started doing this. But I was trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do, and I had an idea that I wanted to start a business. And I was thinking that if I started my own business, what would I be able to do on a daily basis that I looked at it as, if I'm going to be doing this regularly, it has to be something that I would do in my spare time because I enjoy doing it. And I found that when I had spare time, I'm kind of a busybody, so I found that I would always be organizing things. So, when I found out that professional organizing was a career and a profession that people did, I started doing research and figuring out what it took to accomplish that. And I thought, I can do this. And I just took the steps to move forward and do it. And I love it. It's extremely rewarding being able to help people and make people feel lighter when they get rid of things, because it's a really emotional thing for people to get rid of their stuff. But it's a whole other thing when then they can get organized and feel like they can move on with their life and feel good about the space that they're living in. 3 people that I follow about 500 organizers on social media. So if I could give you 3, I love the Home Edit. A lot of people know who the Home Edit is. They're a really fun account to follow because they're an engaging duo of girls of women who own a business, who own a professional organizing business, and they work with a lot of celebrities. So theirs is really fun to follow. Let's see, another one that I really like. I have so many. It's going to be really hard for me to choose. Less is Living and Aspire Organizing. I love following their accounts. They both have really great tips. And, if you're on social media, I recommend following them because they're really great accounts to follow for inspiration. Are there any other ones on here?
I wanted to just go through close because I want to be mindful of everyone's time since we're 2 minutes after. But I just wanted to thank you, Kara, for spending time with us tonight and helping us get organized at home and in our lives, because I think we all need to do that every once in a while, or take some of these tips to heart. And be sure to get in touch with Kara for your personalized organizing needs. Her company is called Utterly Uncluttered, and you can find her on the web at utterlyuncluttered.com or on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you, Kara, for sharing your expertise with us. It was wonderful. And again, thank you for joining us tonight, NEXTGen Detroit Balance, and hope you guys all have a good night. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you for joining. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something out of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Kara.
All right. Good night.
Hey, everybody.